I'm Sandy Hellyer-Riggs.
And I'm Hellyer-Riggs.
And today we're presenting our paper on transformative learning in 2 institutions and content areas. We'll begin by a definition of what is transformative learning. Transformative learning is the process of encouraging students to change from being receptacles of knowledge to more meaningful learning through considering different viewpoints and questioning their own beliefs, values, and assumptions. Students come to any class with different experiences, prior knowledge, abilities, learning styles, attitudes, and values. Whether they realize it or not, students are emotionally as well as intellectually committed to certain ideologies and narratives that support particular versions of the truth and meaning. College classrooms can be an ideal environment for seeking change by challenging these emotional and intellectual commitments. Creating a safe place in the classroom to engage in critical self-reflection as students consider where their views may have originated is a basic condition for transformative learning, according to McGonigal. In providing an activating event, or a way to stimulate students to examine their culturally held beliefs and to consider the limitations of those beliefs, educators can use a variety of techniques to be agents of change and also to help provide the support to encourage transformative learning. I want to emphasize classroom climate is the key to fostering transformative learning. The transformative learning theory lists different conditions and processes that are part of the transformative learning experience, according to Cranton. There must be an activating event that helps the student realize the limitations of his or her current knowledge. The student needs to have opportunities to identify and describe his or her assumptions in current knowledge. The student needs to be able to articulate where those assumptions originated through critical self-reflection. The student needs to be able to discuss with other students and the instructor how those assumptions influenced him or her. Through the classroom discussions, the students can examine alternate ideas. Then students can apply any new perspective they've gained through the experience. According to Cranton, once students have applied these processes, they're more likely to utilize them in different environments. I teach educational psychology classes at Ball State University, which includes courses like human growth and development, adolescent development, adult development, aging, lifespan development. An assignment that I use in the adolescent development class that would be an example of the transforming learning experience is to ask students to choose their favorite popular song. I ask them to describe the music that they've chosen, including the lyrics. They're to determine how the music is marketed and the messages implied by the cover of the CD. I ask them to answer the following questions. What do the lyrics communicate to the adolescent? What is their cultural significance of the music? What are the cultural, moral, and political messages that are conveyed? For which cultural group or groups of adolescents is this music intended? Why might this music appeal to adolescents? The students are actively engaged in this assignment from the beginning. The activating event is analyzing the content of the song and answering the questions posed regarding the CD. The students bring their written assignments to class to discuss the intentions of the lyric and the marketing, which most students haven't even considered before. The final assignment is for students to write a reflection paper on the experience. By challenging students' assumptions that popular music's only purpose is entertainment, students realize that adolescents can be exploited through pop culture. Another example is one activity I use in my lifespan development class, which is on the first day of class, I distribute 3x5 index cards and ask the students to write 10 assumptions they have about older adults. Some of the top assumptions that they write are older adults are slow, they're bad drivers, they're forgetful, they live in retirement villages or nursing homes, they're dependent upon others, they have chronic illnesses and diseases, take lots of medication, and in general, they don't enjoy later life. Once the students have read the material on older adults, I return their cards to them. The activating event is that most of their assumptions are not true about older adults. And as in most age groups, they learn there's a lot of individual variability. We discuss where they derive their assumptions, how their assumptions influence them, and how their assumptions relate to their current knowledge after having read the material. Through our discussions about assumptions and knowledge learned in the course, students have the opportunity to examine alternate ideas. Critical discourse offers students opportunities to reflect through conversation.
In my core curriculum course on modernizing in contemporary Europe, students begin by listing elements of their conception of Europe and of modernity and the likely sources of their ideas. They see their own assumptions and those of their fellows. They are then asked to write about the possible relationships among what they see as characteristics of Europe and of modernity, technology and war, for example. The fundamental challenges, dilemmas, or activating events are presented at the course's outset. A number of scholars, for example, argue that Europe is taking over moral and cultural leadership of the world. Also, there is intense debate about what exactly modernization is or should be, and whether it is overall a good thing. Students contemplate the ways in which the values that they share with Europeans, individualism, self-determination, free inquiry, equality before the law, and so on, have been betrayed by actual behavior. They respond both intellectually and emotionally to these challenges. Their assumptions that the United States is the world's leader and that modernity is continuous progress, and their emotional commitment to those assumptions are at issue throughout the course. One of the first historical phenomena considered is the advent of mechanical printing. We explore the ever-widening circle of sometimes paradoxical consequences of this innovation. Cheaper and more widely distributed information, the commercialization of knowledge, the strengthening of vernacular languages and of new nation states, easier access to the Bible and other foundational cultural texts, an international community of scholars and scientists, and more powerful centralized bureaucracies. A critical point here for challenging students' assumptions about how history happens is that mechanical print was dependent on other technological novelties, paper for one. That paper was introduced to Europe from China via Islam shows them that the world has always been globalizing and that the interpenetration and mutual enrichment of cultures are not new. Information technology from print to the internet remains a theme of the course. The Industrial Revolution, Charles Darwin and social Darwinism, imperialism, the World Wars and Cold War, and the European Union are among the course's other major topics. I asked the students in reading Darwin to find evidence that his theory was influenced by the capitalist ideology of his day. Seeing social Darwinism not merely as opposition to welfare programs, but as an ideology useful to racists and eugenicists, including Hitler, is a revelation to most students. Juxtaposing Adam Smith's abstract theorizing about market economics against Friedrich Engels' graphic description of the horrors of working-class life in England undermines shallow assumptions about capitalism and industry. It is educational in the best sense of the term for students to see that today's issues have a long history and many very deep implications. At the end of the course, we return to the point of departure, the European Union and the possibility that it will supplant the United States as the moral, cultural, and economic leader of the world. Students find it challenging and interesting to imagine why military power might be obsolete. They are asked to decide what criteria they would use to judge political and economic systems. Many of them choose quality of life criteria: life expectancy, infant mortality, leisure time, and so on. Statistics are readily available to assess those aspects of life in Europe, the United States, and other societies. Last semester, more than half of my students chose to do their research and reflection papers on quality of life indices. Most expressed shock at finding the United States well down the list in life expectancy, healthy life expectancy, infant mortality, average height, and a number of other important indicators. They admitted being disturbed. They had felt secure in the assumption that they lived in the best of all possible societies. They had to reconsider how to assess their own communities. Clearly, this bears on the issue of how students construe, validate, and reformulate the meaning of their experience, to quote Cranton. The course qualifies as a deconstruction of meaning schemes, which is Taylor's concept, and a challenge to change frames of reference, as Graboff puts it. Our experience indicates that transformative learning can take place in a wide variety of courses and in different institutional settings. By beginning with an activating event and engaging in activities that continue to challenge their intellectual and emotional commitments to certain types of knowledge, students can achieve perspective transformation and transformative learning.